Stephanie Para?
A grey-haired man in his 50s asked. The girl nodded. She had short, thick black hair. Stephanie looked like a schoolgirl, but according to her documents she was already 27. Very skinny, almost boyish, dressed in spacious baggy clothes, with a look of impertinence. However, in Mr. Larson's office, she behaved modestly, hiding her eyes and keeping her hands behind her back.
So, you want to get a job with us as a cleaner, Stephanie?
The deputy chief asked. She nodded again.
Any criminal record?
Stephanie shrugged her shoulders. She was confused, and that was the most eloquent answer for him. He understood immediately.
Our security service will find out anyway. Tell it like it is.
There is a minor criminal record. I'm out on parole. I really need this job. Mr. Larson shook his head. At that moment, the door behind him opened, and a stately man with greying temples entered the office. He was broad-shouldered, handsome, with a perfectly even, swarthy skin tone.
Mr. Larson, have you finally brought your daughter to meet us?
The man asked.
No, Mr. Nathanson, no, this is a candidate for our job. Are we looking for someone now?
Frank Nathanson was the director of this company. He always gave the impression of a man of integrity and good-naturedness. In fact, that's precisely what he was.
We're looking for a cleaner, remember? Oh, yes. Well, then you're hired. Will you show the girl where her workplace is? Mr. Nathanson asked. Wait a minute. What about the criminal record? We haven't had such a practice yet.
Mr. Larson obviously didn't want to hire her. Stephanie looked at the director, who had just walked through the door, with her wide blue eyes, a pitiful expression on her face.
No such practice? What are you talking about? You've served 15 days yourself,
laughed the supervisor. The deputy blushed and coughed.
Well, it was far from a felony. You're accepted, Stephanie, smiled Frank Nathanson.
The woman gave him her radiant smile, and the deputy, gritting his teeth, handed her the employment application form. Then he dryly introduced her to the staff. When Stephanie began her work duties, she didn't hear Mr. Larson telling his colleagues that the new girl came to them from prison. They began to whisper at once, and Stephanie realized that her little secret was no longer a secret to anyone. She entered the room, washed the floor, and when she left, the women hurriedly checked their pockets and bags, as if she could have grabbed something at any time. They didn't talk to Stephanie. Only one young and rather pretty female employee asked questions. Is she married? Where does she live? How much does she earn? She'd pry, but Stephanie wasn't used to that. She was lost. What to answer? Yes, she had been married, but not anymore. Stephanie grew up in an ordinary town. There was a little girl next door to her. Her name was Meredith, and they became friends. From early childhood, Stephanie shared everything with her. Toys, dreams, experiences. Meredith was an example for her in many ways. She was braver, could stand up for both of them if they were offended. In the school where the girls became classmates, all sorts of things happened. When it came to fighting, Meredith always stood up for her friend. She was always stronger in her studies. She had a great memory and was better at memorizing everything. The only thing Stephanie was better at than her friend was sports. Stephanie found solace in running. She got so into it that she started winning competitions. It was at one of these that she met Kyle. He was a young and handsome graduate. They experienced what they called love at first sight. They exchanged numbers at the next competition and began to communicate. Then Kyle began to visit Stephanie, and they went out in the evenings. He gave her flowers and looked at her in such a way that his gaze was more eloquent than any declaration of love. He was tender, caring, and she fell in love with him, dissolving without a trace. Meredith envied her friend for the first time in her life. Boys were looking at her too, but no one was doing for her what Kyle was doing for Stephanie. "Introduce us," she asked. She really wanted to see what kind of guy he was, and why her friend was so smitten. "Okay, he'll be here today. Come by 9, too, Meredith came and saw a tall, dark-haired young man hugging her best friend. Jealousy flared up in her. Stephanie had only spent time with her before, and now Meredith had already forgotten when they last went out together. When Kyle turned around, Meredith was pierced by another feeling. Goosebumps ran along her skin. It was envy, with a dash of crush. Hi, Meredith. Stephanie's been telling me a lot about you. I finally get to meet you. Kyle smiled at her, and Meredith also fell for him, just like her friend. They were carried away by the same current. The next year, Stephanie, Meredith, and Kyle were inseparable. Meredith always felt like the third wheel. Kyle even introduced her to his friend, but Meredith was too much in love with Kyle. Nothing worked out and they broke up. After graduating from school, Meredith decided to enroll in economics, and Stephanie just followed her friend, as she used to do before. I've been doing pretty well in maths lately. Do you think I can get in? Stephanie asked. She had really become passionate about algebra in the last year. Meredith was better in class in all subjects, while Stephanie was never embarrassed by her modest grades. But in maths she always passed with an A. Meredith was used to being better than her friend in everything, and such trifles hurt her. But it hurt even more that Kyle was with her friend. Both of them enrolled in economics, and to Meredith's shock, Stephanie became the best student in the course. Meredith was consumed by envy. Relations with her friend became strained, and they distanced themselves from each other for some time. As for Kyle, his father arranged for him to study at the Faculty of Business and Technology, although he dreamed of sports. He was in such good physical shape that he could be on the cover of a magazine. He and Stephanie grew closer, and one day Meredith learned that the couple had begun living together. Kyle rented a small apartment, and Stephanie moved in with him. Kyle's parents took it seriously. They had raised their son very traditionally and conservative, so the fact that he and Stephanie moved in together was a shock to them. Upon learning that their son was living with a girl, they forced him to arrange a meeting, which turned into matchmaking. Besides, Stephanie's parents were against their daughter becoming a bride at such age, but the girl begged them to let her be his bride. I love him anyway. I want to be with him, she said. Eventually, passions subsided, and the couple got engaged. Stephanie seemed to blossom at that time. Her studies were going great. She was engaged. She had not abandoned running and was always in great shape. Meredith, on the contrary, began to lag behind her on all fronts. She started drinking and dating one guy after another. She was almost expelled twice for truancy and rudeness. Stephanie was looking to meet with her, but Meredith seemed to shut her out, not answering the phone. Closer to the third year, Stephanie began to appear in loose clothes. Meredith didn't understand why her friend changed her style. When the belly became noticeable, she guessed what had happened. Are you pregnant? Meredith asked. They hadn't spoken in months. Meredith had ignored her, nodding dryly when they met in the hallway, and now she approached on her own. Yes, Stephanie said with a shy smile. Meredith looked at her friend's hand, where there was a ring. Have you married? No, but we're engaged. We're getting married soon. Meredith cried. Stephanie thought that her friend was happy for her, but they were tears of pain, jealousy, and resentment. Meredith had done everything to forget Kyle, not to destroy his relationship with Stephanie, not to do bad things. But her feelings were stronger. No other guy had ever made her forget Kyle, and even alcohol didn't have the desired effect. I'm so happy for you, Meredith said finally and hugged her friend. Stephanie saw it as a sign that they were getting closer again. She made Meredith her maid of honour at the wedding. It was a big celebration. Meredith got drunk and secretly confessed her love to Kyle. Stephanie didn't hear it. After the ceremony in an expensive restaurant, she took Kyle aside and said, You don't know, but I've loved you for a long time. I fell in love as soon as I saw you, and I'm going crazy. I printed out your photo and carry it with me always now." Kyle was shocked. "Do you realize you're saying this to me at my wedding?" "I should have done it earlier, right?" "Come to your senses," he said, leaving Meredith alone. The next day she called him and asked for a meeting. Kyle came. He thought she would want to apologize. "Do you even remember what you told me yesterday?" he asked. Meredith nodded. "I remember it well, and I didn't lie. You may not share my feelings, but it's always nice to know you're loved. I can't help it. Just know that you'll always have me, and I'll never stop loving you." "Phew, I admitted it. I'm relieved." Meredith got up and walked away, leaving Kyle alone to digest what he had heard. He stared after her for a long time. Of course, nothing had changed for Kyle with Stephanie. He continued to love her. She had become his wife. But now, when Meredith came to visit them, sparks flared as soon as their gazes crossed. Kyle and Stephanie had a son, Tommy. Stephanie immersed herself fully in motherhood, while Kyle began to establish his own business. Contrary to his father's wishes, he remained true to his passion for sports. Instead of opening a retail outlet as his father had envisioned, Kyle invested in premises to set up a gym with a boxing ring. The facility also included a bar for spectators who preferred watching rather than participating in sports. The venue quickly became popular, attracting people from other cities. With his success, Kyle bought a large house for his wife and son. As Tommy grew up, he too developed an interest in sports. By the time he started school, Stephanie and Kyle's relationship had cooled. The initial passion had faded, and time had eroded their connection. They now argued over trivial matters. Stephanie was no longer the cheerful girl she once was, consumed by her own affairs. Stephanie graduated later than her friend Meredith, due to her maternity leave. She discovered a talent for record-keeping and became an excellent economist. A successful company offered her a substantial salary to prevent her from joining a competitor. Kyle, however, insisted that she work with him, managing his paperwork. Stephanie didn't tell him, but she craved independence. Living and working together constantly, she longed for a change of environment, an interaction with different people at work. This was her primary reason for staying with another company. There were no inappropriate relationships there, just interesting cases, significant deals, and a sense of importance. She felt valued and could realize her potential as a specialist. Stephanie needed some distance from Kyle, as their relationship was already strained with frequent quarrels. Meredith also matured and married a man who was deeply in love with her. Kyle and Stephanie attended their wedding, a modest celebration in an ordinary cafe. Meredith wanted to cry when she looked at Kyle and he at her. Both realized that their feelings for each other hadn't disappeared at all. Initially, Kyle showed no interest in Meredith. This remained true for the first years of his marriage. However, when Tommy started school, everything changed. Meredith continued to visit Stephanie a couple of times a month, and Kyle began to view her differently. One evening, while drinking wine at Kyle's mansion, Meredith's husband became intoxicated and fell asleep on the sofa. Kyle turned to Meredith and asked, "Tell me, is what you said back then still true? Have you managed to forget me?" Stephanie was busy in the kitchen at this moment. Meredith looked up at Kyle and replied, "It'll always be like this. I told you, I'm loyal as a dog." Unfortunately, her loyalty didn't extend to female friendship. Her feelings for Kyle were stronger. Kyle kissed her in his own house, marking a point of no return. A few days later, Stephanie called Meredith and said that her husband was wondering if she wanted to work in his office on documents. At the time, Meredith was working as a manager in a cell phone store, unable to find work in her field. Unlike Stephanie, she wasn't a skilled economist, so she gladly accepted Kyle's offer, knowing there was more than just a job opportunity behind it. Meredith and Kyle began a clandestine relationship that lasted 6 months. During this time, Meredith made several serious errors in documentation. Stephanie, while reviewing the papers for Kyle's sports complex, noticed these mistakes. She covered for her friend and helped rectify the errors. The situation came to a head on New Year's Eve. Kyle was purchasing new equipment, and Meredith saw an opportunity to profit by buying cheaper, undocumented items. She made the deal behind Kyle's back, but was afraid to sign off on it. Feigning illness, she asked Stephanie to come to the office and sign. And to distract her from scrutinizing the documents, Meredith sent her a photo of Kyle lying in bed with her through a fake person. The image only showed part of an arm, making it impossible to identify the woman. Meredith's ploy worked. Stephanie was devastated and signed everything without checking. Then she called her best friend in tears, exclaiming, "Kyle is cheating on me!" Thus, Meredith pocketed a substantial sum of money. However, problems arose from the deal, not just with tax authorities. The substandard equipment caused an injury, and the case went to court. Stephanie received a prison sentence because the injured party was the son of an influential official. Knowing Stephanie, Kyle couldn't believe she was responsible for choosing the equipment, while Meredith insisted it was all her doing. "How could you do this to me? You're like a sister to me," Stephanie shouted. Meredith retorted with angelic innocence. "I know you're facing a terrible situation, but that's no reason to act despicably, Stephanie. You can't blame me for what you did yourself. You're listed as the chief accountant, while I just handle papers. If you'd listened to your husband and left your work for his business, maybe you wouldn't have made this mistake. Or did you do it intentionally? Was it really for the money?" Stephanie lunged at Meredith, but Kyle separated them, siding with Meredith. She had been influencing him for a long time, and immediately claimed that Stephanie was interested in the equipment purchase. Kyle now had no doubt that his wife was to blame. The trial was lost and Stephanie was sentenced to prison. Meredith visited her there. "Why did you come? You've left my son motherless, disgraced me and ruined my life. Why are you doing this to me?" Stephanie asked. "Why should you have everything? Maybe I want to be happy too. All methods are fair in love." Meredith showed Stephanie her phone with more pictures. Stephanie finally recognized who was in the photos with her husband. Furious and hysterical, she called Kyle, screaming and swearing. "Your mistress set me up. Don't you see?" "I'm sorry, Stephanie, but it has nothing to do with that. I'm just a man. We're naturally polygamous. But I found where the money went. It's in your account, so you can stop lying about it being Meredith's fault." Yes, Meredith had taken care of it. She had initially wanted to embezzle a tidy sum, but realized she would gain more by simply framing Stephanie. Soon after the trial, Kyle terminated her parental rights and divorced her. A few months later, he married Meredith. Stephanie learned about it from her parents. They tried to defend their daughter's rights, but to little avail. However, they saw their grandson Tommy regularly and reminded him of his mum. At first, Kyle opposed their visits, but his parents admonished him. "If we were deprived of seeing our grandson, we would go crazy. Your wife made a mistake and she's paying for it, but you can't take Tommy's grandparents away from him. No, son, it's a bad idea," his mother told him. Kyle was receptive to her advice. Over time, he even became curious about Stephanie. He asked about her from his ex-mother-in-law, who replied that her daughter was doing fine and should soon be released for good behavior. Meanwhile, Stephanie was learning to survive. There were moments when she suffered severely. She didn't retaliate against the aggression of other prisoners. Not everyone there was an innocent victim. Many women were there for valid reasons. Some had anger issues. Others wanted to hurt, humiliate and harm. That kind of temperament. Stephanie endured it because she had a purpose. She desperately wanted to get out and reclaim her son. "Why don't you answer these scumbags? Answer them in their way. Hit them," said those who were on her side. Stephanie was rising from the floor, her lip bloody. "No," she said quietly. "None of them are worth my spending an extra day without my son." She was studying legal intricacies, wondering what rights she had. Kyle's family was wealthy, but she was left with nothing, and fighting them was clearly challenging.
"I'll give you some advice,"
said the lawyer. Stephanie's parents had paid to consult her. "Yes, I'll do whatever it takes. I'm willing to do the impossible, but I'll get my son back."
"First, you'll have to get out on parole. That will show you've behaved well and that you're not a danger to society, that you've learned your lesson. Second, you'll have to find a job quickly, any job, Stephanie. Work 4 months and then sue to have your parental rights restored. During that time, it's a good idea to volunteer. Judges will appreciate that. Also, you must have no misdemeanors. Even cross the road properly during those months. At first, your rights may be partially restored, and I'm pretty sure they will be. Your husband's family is powerful, so they may try to keep you from seeing your son, but in this country the law usually favours the mother. Even mothers with problems get their rights back if they recover. You don't have that problem. You see, you have an advantage. In fact, the hardest part is happening right now. You're away from your child. A lawyer must not only know the law, but also be a good psychologist. Luckily, that's precisely what Stephanie got. "You're right. I don't even have time to cry. It's hard here, but even when I'm mocked here, the pain of separation from my son is stronger," she said, and started crying in front of the lawyer. He sympathized with her, having seen worse in his practice. After that, Stephanie decided she would live each day striving for the future. She began to exercise to keep herself in great shape, realizing that one day she would face the judge, who would see not a woman with faded eyes, but someone strong and unbroken. And finally, the day came when Stephanie was able to fulfill the first part of the plan and get out of prison on parole. Now, when she got a job in, she began to work diligently, despite the sidelong glances. At first, everyone treated her with distrust because of her prison past, but one day, a colleague stayed late at work doing a report. Stephanie had finished cleaning the floor and was about to leave. "Oh, I'll never finish this," exclaimed young Emma. "Hard work? Deadline?" inquired Stephanie. "These reports, I need a formula and it won't insert. I don't know how to work in this program. Why didn't I become a chef, as my mother advised?" Stephanie walked over to her. It's a little more complicated here. You have to copy the blank lines, but not like you did. Don't highlight the first column. Look, I'll show you." Stephanie took the mouse from Emma's hands and carefully copied the required data, then with a deft click pasted it. The formula appeared. "Wow, you're a genius. How do you know that?" "My first field is in economy. I worked in it for a long time." Emma was new to the team and had no prejudice towards Stephanie, though she had certainly heard about the criminal record. "And now they won't take you back to that place again, will they?" Stephanie shook her head sadly. "I doubt it. It might be worth a try, though. My supervisor was reasonable. I don't know why I thought my ceiling now was to be a cleaner. Anyway, it's no big deal. Let me help you to end it quickly." Stephanie sat down at the table and quickly completed Emma's tasks. They were so engrossed in their work that they didn't notice Mr. Nathanson appeared behind them. Well, what's this, Emma? I suppose you'll be helping Stephanie mop the floor next," he said with a smile. "If I have to, I'll do it," Emma replied, looking embarrassed. Stephanie shook her head. "What? No, that's nonsense. I just wanted to help, and we're already finished." Frank sat down and looked at Stephanie. What did you say your education was?
I'm an economist, but since I went to jail for someone else's misdeeds, hardly anyone cares, Stephanie said bitterly, walking past the boss with her mop. Emma's work was almost done. I'm sorry, I was struggling with the formula. The program is new and she gave me a hint. She's excellent at it. I don't think there's anyone here who can work these spreadsheets as skillfully. I've only seen such skill from a university professor. Frank Nathanson nodded and left. That evening, as Stephanie was returning to her parents' house, he leafed through her file. He made inquiries and quickly received all the information. Her jail time, education and work history. Frank studied her biography with raised eyebrows.
Well, we've never had such cleaners before, and I doubt we will again, he sighed, thinking he should give the girl a chance. Since she claimed to have been jailed for someone else's crimes, she would likely be careful now. And specialists with her level of expertise were difficult to come by. Frank had an economics degree himself and constantly had to double-check his staff's reports. It would be ideal if he could focus on solving current problems and making decisions while relying on someone else for such tasks. Mr. Larson was a good specialist, of course, but he was old school. He excelled as a partner and always gave important legal advice, but he wasn't strong in economics or computer programs. With these thoughts, Frank got into his car and drove to his lonely bachelor apartment. It was dark and quiet as usual. Should I get a cat? He muttered to himself. On the wall hung a portrait of an incredibly beautiful blonde. He missed her, but not as much as he used to. Several weeks passed. Frank was preparing for an important deal, having completely forgotten about his intention to talk to Stephanie. Mr. Larson, his deputy and assistant, insisted that the deal would take the company to a new level. But there was another reason. If the deal didn't pan out, they would be in serious trouble. Frank consulted another specialist, who, after a quick assessment of the contract terms, concluded it was a risky 50-50. Well, who dares wins, Mr. Larson said. And by the way, if you miss this opportunity, you'll be kicking yourself. Didn't you dream of reaching the international level? This will open all doors for you. All right, don't push it. I'll give you my decision tomorrow morning. Currently, I need to think about it. The director ushered everyone out of his office and began weighing the pros and cons. Stephanie came to clean late in the afternoon. When she stepped inside, Frank Nathanson was tossing a coin in the air. Damn, he snarled, but softened when he saw the young woman with a bucket and rag enter. Heads or tails? Stephanie smiled, getting down to business. Tails for the 5th time. And how many heads were there? 6, he sighed, and suddenly realized he hadn't left his office all day. Thus, he decided to give the cleaning lady a chance to mop the floor without his presence. He went to the cafe, had tea and a croissant, and when he returned, he saw Stephanie sitting behind his desk. His eyebrows shot up. I apologize for prying, but this concerns me too, Stephanie exclaimed. If you sign this, the firm will go under, and I need to work for you for at least another 2 months. Mr. Nathanson stepped closer. What are you talking about? He remembered that Emma had called her an incredible specialist, and that she had been highly valued at her previous workplace. Look, you have clauses that will make you pay huge compensation even if it's not your fault. Trust me, in practice, it's best not to get involved with such partners. They'll make you pay for all their potential expenses up front. You'll lose money and won't be able to sustain the project itself. And if you take out a loan and the deal falls through, which is likely, you'll simply go bankrupt with huge debts. This document is your death sentence. Frank began to argue, citing his deputy's words, but Stephanie demolished all his arguments. I bet if Mr. Larson is lobbying for this project, he doesn't wish you well. He couldn't have missed that this would sink you. Do you understand? These clauses must be renegotiated. Oh my goodness, Stephanie. So the project is a sham, And Mr. Larson sold out to the competition.
Do you see any other explanation? Stephanie exclaimed, waving her hands. She herself would never have thought that Mr. Larson, who had always treated his boss so well and set him as an example to everyone, would suddenly betray him. The next day, Mr. Nathanson drove up to Stephanie's house at 8 a.m. and called her. Good morning. She was surprised at such an early visit. Good morning. Are you ready? I need you today. I want to publicly nail Mr. Larson. He'll explain everything to us and the board of shareholders about why he's lobbying for this deal. You know, I've been thinking and analysing, and I remembered a few things that confused me. Mr. Larson didn't want me to consult the shareholders. He was supposedly concerned about my credibility in the company. What can I do? I gave you all the information. You're not one of those who can't retell the data, and you understand everything perfectly well. Maybe it's better without me. Stephanie chickened out. A cleaning lady going before the board of shareholders with her theories? What if she was kicked out in disgrace? She was sure of her conclusions, but what if she was wrong after all and was about to be publicly put on her spot? You're not a cleaning lady anymore. You'll take Mr. Larson's place from this day forward. I came early so you could buy a suit. I'll take you to the store where my friend works, and they'll fit you for free. Should she have said no? Not take the risk? At that moment, Stephanie was terribly afraid, but she thought she could proudly declare in court that in a month she had been promoted from cleaning lady to assistant director of a large company. Thus, she got into Frank's expensive car with tinted windows and rushed towards her destiny. First, she picked out a chic cream business suit and shoes. She used to love heels, but after prison, she felt that those shoes were no longer for her. Standing on the stilettos, Stephanie looked at herself and realized that she looked stunning, even without any makeup. She was confident in her appearance, confident that she was right. When Stephanie entered the office, all those present who knew her as a cleaner gasped. Mr. Lawson's jaw dropped. Stephanie, you haven't confused anything? He asked haughtily. Stephanie hasn't mixed up anything. Come in, Mr. Nathanson smiled at her. The meeting began with Mr. Nathanson bringing everyone up to speed. Then he passed the word to Stephanie, and she demolished the idea of signing a new contract with an unfamiliar company on strange terms that looked favourable at first glance. Mr. Larson blushed to the roots of his hair. It became obvious to everyone at the table that he had been bribed by competitors. The man flew out of the office, almost knocking down the secretary, whom he had been eyeing for months, hinting that he could arrange a raise if she would be more lenient to him. The same day, Mr. Larson wrote a letter of resignation and left. No one ever saw him again, neither in this office nor in this city. They say that he went to his younger sister in the capital, and there he started everything from the beginning. He got a job as an ordinary manager, but advanced quickly because he had a knack for going over people's heads. As it turned out later, he was not bribed. He just wanted Frank fired so he could be put in place of the stupid director. And then he would have made a mess of things. Access to the accounts and any opportunities would have been at his fingertips. From that same day, Stephanie began to work under Mr. Nathanson's direction in his office. He brought her up to speed and never ceased to be amazed at how quickly she grasped everything. They often had to stay up late. Stephanie was fine with it. She was interested in everything. May I ask you something personal? Frank said one day, tearing himself away from the papers. Ask, although I think I know what about, answered Stephanie, and told her boss the whole story. How she grew up with Meredith, how she met Kyle, and how her friend had set her up. Yeah, your life is like a detective movie. Except in the movies there's usually a good ending, while I don't know if they'll give me my son. My husband forbade me to see him. I called him and he said no. I can't even understand why he's doing this to me. How long has it been since you've seen your child? Frank asked. Stephanie sighed intermittently. Almost 2 years. I was sentenced up just before New Year's."
"Well, I have a feeling that you'll celebrate this New Year's Eve with your son. I'll help you," he smiled.
Stephanie smiled too. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she smiled. The very next day, Frank asked the company's lawyer to handle her case. The lawyer was competent in all matters, a true professional. The process started, and the lawsuit was filed. The trial was to take place just before the New Year holidays. Stephanie was very nervous. 3 days before the hearing, Frank again asked her to stay late. They were discussing the details of a new deal that could bring good income, provided the partner would make concessions on 2 important points of the contract. They went outside where it was quite dark. The snow was falling quietly. "I give you a ride home," Frank offered, and Stephanie got into his car. "Can I ask you a personal question?" she asked. "Go ahead," Frank answered without taking his eyes off the road. "Everyone in the office says you don't have a family, but you have a picture on your desk of you with a woman and a small child." Frank smiled. "I had a family. I married a woman with a child. Her name was Yulia. We lived together for 4 years and I considered her daughter mine. Everything was fine, and then she suddenly said she loved her ex and went to him. He was an athlete and was building a career abroad. My wife left me and went to him, took my stepdaughter. I was left alone." Stephanie frowned. "That's so sad." "Yeah, we can call each other, but every time I'm more and more convinced that they're better off there. He can give them more time and money. Athletes are paid well there, so I gave up." Stephanie sympathized with Frank and suddenly offered, "You know, we could go to the movies." Frank was confused. "Let's go." The next day they watched a thriller. Stephanie held Frank's hand the whole movie. They laughed together, discussed the plot. Later that night she fell asleep thinking that she had the best boss in the world, and that she had done the right thing, because she had helped him to unwind this evening. At the same time, she was not so nervous because the next day was the court date. Frank came there with her. When Stephanie entered the building, the lawyer leisurely approached. "The case is ours. Kyle filed for divorce, and that woman, his wife, never adopted Tommy. So, in this case, we should get the child back without any issues," he whispered to Stephanie before the process began. She glowed. What a piece of news. It's not good to rejoice in the failures of other people, but not in that case. In court, Stephanie's lawyer asked Kyle, "Is it true that you and your wife Meredith are in the process of divorcing?" Kyle lowered his head. "Yes, but that's irrelevant. I'm the boy's father." "All right," continued the lawyer. "And is it true that you lost your business and now you have no official source of income?" Stephanie was shocked. What a twist. She had only been gone for 2 years. What had happened to her husband's business in that time? "Our family has plenty of money," he replied. "That's irrelevant. You are now officially unemployed. You've been declared officially bankrupt, according to my sources. That's correct. Or am I wrong?" Kyle lowered his eyes. "That's right." At that point, the judge sighed. Stephanie spoke next. She walked in her impressive business suit and told what she got the sentence for, how everything really was. She did not conceal that she had signed without looking. Then the lawyer asked Frank, as Stephanie's direct employer, to give characteristics of her. However, to make a final decision, the judge called Tommy. Seeing his mother, the boy cried, "Mummy, where have you been for so long? I want my mummy!" he cried. Stephanie was tearing toward him, but she was seated. "I don't want to live with my dad any longer. That means Meredith is there. She hates me, and grandmother doesn't take care of me at all. After the death of her grandfather, she is sad all the time. I want to go to my mum. Please, can I live with her? Dad, I'm sorry, I'll visit you. I love you, but I want to live with my mum." "You live with Mum too.
and I want to live with mine."
Stephanie didn't know that her father-in-law had died. She was shocked again. Soon, the judge banged the gavel, announcing that Tommy was staying with his mum because he wanted to do so himself. The living conditions in Stephanie's apartment were suitable. The 3-bedroom apartment she lived in with her parents allowed them to raise their child. Stephanie left the courtroom with her son. He held his mother's hand so tightly, as if he were afraid that she would be taken away from him. "Stephanie, wait!" Kyle called out to her. She turned around. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" Stephanie asked, confused with squeamish. "For everything. Meredith and I broke up recently. I went bankrupt. The business collapsed when I invested all the money in my father's treatment. He was seriously ill and didn't survive the operation. After that, I couldn't get back into business. My competitors beat me to the punch. I lost my sports centre. Meredith said she didn't need a bankrupt and left me for my friend. I was shocked. I thought she really loved me, but only you truly loved me. When she left, she admitted she set you up. Not only did I cheat on you with her, but I didn't believe in your innocence. I didn't fight for you. You did time because of me. I was afraid you'd take Tommy, and you did. And now I'm all alone." Stephanie pressed her lips together. He had caught his boomerang. "I won't do what you did, Kyle. Tommy can live with me, but he can visit you. I guess he remains the only joy to your mother." "He is. Thank you, and I'm sorry." He turned around and walked away. For the first time in his life, Kyle had humbly asked for forgiveness. Stephanie sighed. At that moment, Frank approached them. "I invite everyone to the cafe. The lawyer is coming with us too. I've already made arrangements, and refusals aren't accepted." Tommy jumped joyfully, and Stephanie couldn't refuse. In the cafe, they ate ice cream and fooled around. Stephanie didn't notice how time flew by. "Tomorrow, stay with your son. I don't need you at work," Frank said. The woman thanked her boss, but it seemed insufficient for her. She hugged him, and it was so unexpected that Frank was speechless. He hugged her back. "And this is my second dad, yes?" Tommy asked in a childishly straightforward way. Stephanie immediately stepped aside of her boss. "No, come on, that's my boss. His name is Mr. Nathanson." Tommy chuckled. "That's no way to hug a boss." Stephanie and Frank laughed. Since that day, their relationship began to warm. Frank visited Stephanie's house and met her parents. They spent a lot of time together, but he didn't dare touch her. Stephanie sensed something was holding him back. "Frank, what's between us?" she asked one day, unable to bear it any longer. "It's all right, I think." "I just want to know. Tommy is attached to you, and so am I. Are you my friend or something more?" Frank inhaled. "I'm something more, Stephanie. If you promise me you won't go back to Kyle later." "Is he coming to see you?" "I've seen him give flowers to you, and I've been through this before. I mean, I told you. I don't want to undergo it again. I'll get attached to you and you'll go back to your ex. You're family, aren't you? And you have a mutual son." Stephanie realized the reason for his uncertainty. He betrayed me. He wouldn't let me see my own child out of spite. And he cheated on me with my friend. "No, I won't go back to him, even if my life depended on it," she said seriously. Frank nodded and took her hand. It was one of the few touches that had happened between them. From that day, everything changed. Frank believed her and felt more confident. Tommy became firmly attached to him. When they decided to get together, the boy smiled and said, "Finally, it's about time. You're adults, but you act like children." Stephanie and Frank managed the firm together. She was his right hand. All those women who had looked askance at her when she first came to work as a cleaner now tried to make amends. But Stephanie held no grudges. Everyone has their prejudices. She treated everyone in the company equally well, with understanding. Soon Stephanie and Frank had a wedding, to which Kyle and his mother were invited. They modestly congratulated the newlyweds and quickly left. Tommy had persuaded them to come. Once Stephanie visited their home and communicated with Kyle's mother, she said that she had always been on Stephanie's side and didn't approve of Meredith, whom her son had brought into the house, but the past couldn't be changed. A year after the wedding, Stephanie became pregnant and gave birth to Frank's first child, a charming daughter named Karina. A year later, their second lovely girl, Christina, was born. Both daughters resembled their father, but the youngest inherited her mother's chin and strong-willed character. So, Stephanie, despite the setup of her best friend, the treason of her first husband, a real term of imprisonment, still managed to get out of all this murky and dirty story.